Everyone cool? You're being recorded?
Sarah's doing no, knitting. Yes. Everybody.
So I will just preface this class by saying this is possibly my favorite session to teach. So it doesn't have to be yours, but it happens to be mine. I'll start with the story. When I was in college, I had a music history class. It was very challenging professor, and very challenging midterm. And he posted the grades outside his office, and he posted them he didn't list our names, but by our student ID. So whatever my ID was, you'd scan down and then you'd read across. You see your grade on the midterm, and I found my student ID, and I just over and I said, 66. Oh. I said, whoa. And so, if you could just imagine my body language. And it was all the things of, how could I have done so poorly? I know it was hard, but how could I have done so poorly? How am I gonna, what am I gonna do about failing this? Am I gonna fail this class? Parents. There's a lot of, and so I happened to run into the teacher, and I said, "Were those the right grades?" He said, "Yeah," and he said, "By the way, I scaled at 30 points." Oh. I said, "So I got a 36?" He goes, "I guess," and so anyway, so didn't do me any good. So, and I actually was thinking in the Megillah we talk about Haman when he's feeling sad. It's chafui rosh. He's like distraught, and that's how I was feeling. And then I went to class. I was like, okay, maybe I can, make it up with class participation. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I show up, and the professor, everyone's there, and he says, so the grades that were posted were correct, but I had the student IDs mixed up. He turns on the screen, and he says, here are the correct order. And so I quickly, 94! I run outside. By the way, of course, that had been a 64, but still, a 64 was one of the highest grades in the class. I run outside. I was doing cartwheels, somersaults, I don't know, but this was an example of hafuch, about things turned around. So we have this great line in the Megillah, the Jews were saved from their enemies. V'chodesh hazeh, on this month, asher napach lehem miyagon l'simcha ume'evel leyom tov, the same month that had been transformed for them from one of grief and mourning to one of festive joy. That for me. Now I know that, a better grade on a midterm, in the grand scheme of the universe isn't a big deal, but for me, age 19, this was about as close to one transforming from grief and mourning to festive joy. And I can definitely relate to that. So this is one type of example where our lives can be turned from one of mourning into joy. And then there's and that we're going to look at that first, but then there's a more heavy version, which we'll get to in a moment. So the book of Esther is full of hafuchness, of hafuch is turned around. Anyone in Israel know what a coffee is, hafuch? It's where you put the milk in first and the coffee over it, like a cappuccino. It's reversed. Usually you put milk into coffee. This is where you put the milk in first and the coffee. The book of Esther is full of reversals. Many, as we've discussed over the past 2 weeks, are in the spirit of comedy, and that's how we're going to look at it for right now. But then we're going to take a little more serious look at it. I'm just going to keep this open in case anyone does come in. So we're going to look at several examples of reversals and reversals of fortune in the Megillah. So the first we're going to look at is when Esther applies for the job of queen of Persia. Mordechai says, "Do not tell anybody what." Right. And Esther, what is it? What do I have in bold? But Esther did not reveal her kindred or her people as Mordechai had instructed her, for Esther obeyed Mordechai's bidding. Makes sense? She's, she's Mordechai's adopted, their cousin. She's his daughter. She's, by all intents and purposes, his father. She obeys Mordechai's bidding in this. Yes?
When I was growing up, I was told that Esther didn't apply voluntarily, that she was selected by Haman's group going out looking for beautiful.
Yeah. So, of course, I was anachronistically saying she was applying for the job, so that was a little silly in itself. But yes, the king. This is from session 1. The king says, "Bring all the virgins." The Megillah loves virgins, virgins, and what else? Eunuchs. Why? Because it's funny. He says, "Bring in all the virgins," and Mordechai says, "Oh, looking for virgins? I've got one." So Mordechai urges it. It's up for debate. Was she taken? Was she given? Whatever. But no, she doesn't exactly apply for the job, but she is put up for the job by Mordechai. But anyway, she doesn't say anything about her heritage. She obeyed Mordechai's bidding. Fast forward a few chapters, and we have Mordechai coming to Esther, saying, "You've got to tell Achashverosh to save the Jews." And after some pleading and some back and forth of Patrick running back and forth between the palace and the gate. Okay. Esther gives him some instructions. Says, gather everybody and declare a fast. And I'm going to talk to Achashverosh. And what does it say? So Mordechai went about the city and did just as Esther had commanded him. So we have this reversal of Esther doing Mordechai's bidding to Mordechai doing Esther's bidding. When Haman,
Are we supposed to?
no, that's too silly. Haman is distraught. Why? Because he's been promoted. He should be very happy. But every time he sees what? Every time he sees Mordechai, Mordechai just by being Mordechai gets under his skin, and he gets broigus is the term in Persian, right? I'm joking. It's Yiddish, but yes.
I got it. But the reason he gets unhappy is because Mordechai didn't stand up when everybody else did.
Well, he didn't bow down to him, right? But even later, anytime he sees Mordechai at the gate, he's like, that guy. Yeah, what's up?
Broikus is a good word.
Broigus is a good word. Yeah.
Also, I was thinking about the reversal you meant when the Jews fast, the Persians feast.
Absolutely. There's a little bit of reversing from the festive nature of the beginning to the fasting. So Haman told his family, so what does Haman do when he's feeling so bad? He gathers his family for support. So Haman told them about his great wealth and his many sons and all about how the king had promoted him and advanced him above the officials and the courtiers. Yet all this means nothing to me while I see Mordechai the Jew sitting in the palace gate. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Let a stake be put up 50 cubits high. In the morning ask the king to have Mordechai impaled on it. Then you can go gaily with the king to the feast." So Haman goes for comfort and support from his family, and he gets it. You could argue the efficacy of their suggestion, but they come out and support him. Later, after the incident where Mordechai has to lead, Haman has to lead Mordechai on the horse. He's feeling humiliated. Oh, I thought that honor was for me. Haman hurried home, his head covered in mourning. You could also argue this is a reversal of Mordechai sitting in mourning. So Haman told his wife Zeresh and his friends everything that had befallen him. So Haman got support from his family the first time, so it makes sense. Okay, it's like, if this were a little kid, he'd say he's running back. Again, he's running back to his parents for support. His advisors and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordechai before whom you have begun to fall is of Jewish stock, you will not overcome him. You will fall before him to your ruin." Well, with friends like this. So we have in just one chapter earlier, his friends are like, go get him, go get him. One chapter later, they're like, forget it. You're on your own. You're done for. And again, this is part of the sort of caricature humor of the Megillah, is that is sort of both the inflated sense of importance of Haman and the fact that there's the irony. The reader knows that he's doomed, and he doesn't know that he's doomed. By the way, how obvious is it that he's doomed? Even his family knows that he's doomed. And he's the only one. So here is okay, so here, later, so Esther has the brilliant plan. How is she going to break the news to Ahasuerus that she's Jewish and therefore she will die in Haman's plot? What's her plan?
To
throw a party. What better way to appease your philandering king than by throwing him a party? And so she says, Queen Esther replied, "If your majesty," so king says, "What can I do for you? I'll do anything for you, up to half my kingdom." I think that sounds like a pretty good deal. But Esther says, "No, if your majesty will do me the favor, and if it pleases your majesty, let my life be granted me as my wish, and my people as my request." Let's break down the poetry here. What is she saying? What is she doing? She's pleading for her life. And the life of her people. But she is pleading for her life. If it pleases your majesty, let my life be granted me as my wish. Give me my life. Let me live. She's pleading for her life. Fast forward. This was chapter 7, verses 3 and verse 3. Just a few verses later, when Esther lets the cat out of the bag and says, "Haman's the bad guy," and the king in his fury left the wine feast for the palace garden wall, Haman remained to plead with Queen Esther for his life. So, what is the double reversal here?
She's pleading for her life, and he's pleading for his life.
Exactly. So that's the biggest part. She was pleading for her life. Now Haman is pleading for his life. And who is he pleading it from?
The queen.
Right, who had been pleading. So as you can see, some of these reversals are from different parts of the book, and some of them happen in close proximity. So here, let's flash back a little bit. What was Zeresh and all his friends said? What should you do in response to, if this Mordechai is getting under your skin, what should you do? I've got it up there in bold. Let's read from the text. "Let a stake be put up 50 cubits high. In the morning ask the king to have Mordechai impaled on it." So this gigantic, Patrick, how high did we say 50 cubits was?
75 feet.
About 75 feet. That's ridiculously high. Literally, it's ridiculous. In the first session, we talked about the humor of exaggeration. Like, this is just, it's purposely ridiculous. So, Haman, the proposal pleased Haman, and he had the stake put up for Mordechai. I'd like to see like a little pun here where he like gets a grill going and he's like, let's settle our differences. He makes like a steak. Okay. I thought that would get a bigger laugh, but that's okay.
Well, because coming from a vegetarian, it's kind of hard to laugh at.
Right. That's why it's more funny, the vegetarian coming up with the Viking grill. So once Haman has been outed, they're like, what do we do? What do we do? Then Harvonah, one of the Megillah loves eunuchs, in attendance of the king, said, what is more, a stake is standing in Haman's house, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for the man whose words saved the king. Impale him on it, the king ordered. So Haman builds the stake for Mordechai, but it was the one who built the stakes who gets impaled upon it. Just think of the killer bunny in Monty Python. It's the humor. The gore is funny gore. It's cathartic gore. Oh, you know what? Every time I'm on a roll, Dr. Sherry comes in and stands up for the bunny. Thanks, Dr. Sherry.
We have to get you a bagel instead of a roll.
So, so remember, we talk. Another piece of the humor of the Book of Esther is the vastness of the empire. And George pointed out, well, what's funny about that? It was a vast empire, but that's part of the comedy, is making fun of the vastness of the empire and how hard it is. Once you've got a message, to get a message out, you have to send, you have to write it on scrolls, like how many cows and how many goats do you have to kill to get the parchment to write all of these, and how much ink, and then to send it out throughout the vastness of the empire. Now, Haman's edict. We have, accordingly, written instructions were dispatched by couriers all the king's provinces to destroy, massacre, and exterminate all the Jews and to plunder their possessions. So the written instructions sent out, but then when the Jews are, quote unquote, saved, remember, because they're not quite saved,
They're allowed to defend.
they're allowed, because why aren't they quite saved? Because once an edict has been set forth by the king, it can't be reversed. So, what do? Letters were dispatched by mounted courtiers riding steeds using the king's service, bred of the royal stud. Like, we're sending out the king's finest to get that. I mean, this is the exaggerations here. You could argue, well, this is really important. Come on. To this effect, the king has permitted the Jews in every city to assemble and fight for their lives. If any of the people in province attacks them, they may destroy, massacre, and exterminate his armed force together with women and children. And we're going to pause right there for a moment. So we have this reversal. First, there's an edict going out that the Jews will be killed, murdered, you could say. But then an edict goes out throughout the kingdom that they can defend themselves. Now, let's go back.
Even to the death.
Yep, absolutely. And so the Jews are not just to be killed, but also plundered. Take their possessions. And here, the Jews are allowed, again, not just to defend themselves, kill if necessary, but plunder. And we're going to come back to remember that. They are allowed, they're given permission to defend themselves, kill if necessary, and plunder the possessions. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Can you hold it?
This reminds me of,
Don't say it.
That's just what.
Don't say
I'm
it.
not gonna do Esther, I was gonna do.
Don't. Okay. So earlier, when the decree goes out that the Jews are going to be murdered, the city of Shushan was dumbfounded, and that's actually one of the verses that we learned. We chant according to Echa, Lamentations. Va'ir Shushan navocha. So there's this sadness, confusion of when this message goes out. But when the message of the Jews being saved goes out, and the city of Shushan rang with joyous cries. So the message of the destruction goes out, Shushan is dumbfounded. When the message of the salvation gets out, the city of Shushan rang with joyous cries. Steve, you look a little confused.
That's not normal, but why would the city
It-
feel bad about the Jews being killed?
It's unclear. Either it was so bad that it did transcend Jewishness, or you could say that there was sadness among the Jews throughout Shushan. You could understand it either way. It's a fair point. When, as the message goes out, in every province of the king's command and decree reached, there was great mourning among the Jews. Evel gadol laYehudim. It was so sad they chanted it into the melody of Echa, of fasting, weeping, and wailing. When the Jews are saved, laYehudim haytara v'simcha v'sason v'ikar. The Jews enjoyed light, gladness, happiness, and honor. Where do we say this verse? Havdalah. So in another class that I teach, I talk about what is the implication of reciting this verse at the end of Shabbat, but not for now. Now here, I talked about how there's sometimes an instance here, and then it's reversed several chapters later. Here is the sort of most immediate reversal. The king says to Haman, "What should I do to reward somebody who the king really loves?" And Haman, of course, says, "Who could he be talking about but me? Let royal garb that the king has worn be brought, and a horse on which the king has ridden, and on whose head," not the horse, but the king, "the royal diadem has been set, and let the attire and the horse be put in the charge of the king's noble courtiers, and let the man whom the king desires to honor be attired and paraded on the horse through the city square, while proclaim before him, 'This is what is done for the man whom the king desires to honor.'" Well, let's see what happens. That's verse 8 and 9. Verse 11. How many verses later is that, mathematicians? 2. So Haman took the garb and the horse and arrayed Mordecai and paraded him through the city square and proclaimed before him, "This is what is done for the man whom the king desires to honor." So an almost immediate reversal. Here, and here's one even within the same verse. Right after this, Vayashav Mordechai el Shar HaMelech, then Mordechai returned to the king's gate, this place of honor. V'Haman nidchaf el beito evel v'chafui rosh, while Haman hurried home, his head covered in mourning. So this in real-time reversal. Mordechai returns to the king's gate. Haman goes home, his head covered in mourning. I just read recently that I think it was in Germany that they do a little pun on this, chafui rosh, covered in mourning. Rosh, his head, chafui, covered. They yell out, "Fui! Fui!" when they hear chafui. By the way, people were asking me last week when we think the book of Esther was written. I was right the first time, between the 2nd and 4th century before the Common Era. So between destructions of the temple. So So then here's, I taught this in the first session. This is just, this isn't even a reversal of something earlier, but this is just a funny line. When the Jews are told, or when Shushan is told the Jews can defend themselves, and many of the people of the land profess to be Jews. I sometimes I don't even like to translate it because it's hard to translate. Mit Yahadim, it's reflexive of the word Yehudah, Jew. They mit Yahadim. They Jewed themselves. They self-identify. We don't know exactly. There's a midrash that says they actually circumcised themselves. They converted, which I'll tell you, you could look at that as pretty funny. Or they profess to be Jewish. I mean, what did they do? Put on a strimal? Or like, what did they, start? Did they start watching Mel Brooks? Like, it does. Did they start? I've got my bagel. Like, what exactly did they do to meet Yahadim? The truth is, we don't know, and it's possible that that's part of the humor. Did they profess to be Jews? Did they actually convert? Did they, act in a Jewish manner? We don't know. But again, for the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. The Jews had been the ones who were afraid. Now everybody else is afraid of the Jews.
That's a reversal too, I suppose, because I'm imagining around that time, 400 years before the Common Era, and we are living in Babylon and Syria, and we always try to assume the manners and the actions of the country that we're in. And we try to be like them.
I love that. I love that. Patrick, everyone understand, Patrick is saying that throughout the diaspora, there's a balance between Jews keeping their own identity and assimilating with the dominant culture. And here we have the dominant culture assimilating in one way or another to us. Beautiful. George.
There's a historical role reversal.
Yeah?
Because it's the Babylonians who destroyed the temple in 586 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Persians who conquered the Babylonians and became our friends, more or less. And it was Cyrus the Great, the Persian emperor, who freed the Jews. So to me, there's a historical reversal.
Absolutely.
The Persians, and they're going after us. And,
right. But basically, the top has become the bottom, and the bottom has become the top. That is one of the key. Remember, that was the comedy of burlesque, where the serious is treated as common, and the common is given mock dignity. You could argue whether this is mock dignity or not, but it is reversal of roles, absolutely. Now, before we go on, I want everyone to remember, what were the Jews, so the people of Persia were allowed to murder the Jews and plunder. In the reversal, the Jews could defend themselves, kill as necessary, and plunder. Just keep that in the back of your head. So now, I talked about that one sort of hafuch, where we were feeling a sense of mourning, M-O-U-R, mourning, and that got turned into joy. I gave the example of my exam grade turning from a 66 into a 94. I'm guessing that people have examples like that in their lives. Here's a different type of reversal, and we're not going to talk about it right now, but just think about a time in your life when you had an opportunity, to right a wrong that you had done. Not necessarily to right the actual wrong that you had done, but when you came to a similar situation, you decided to act better than you did the previous time. So let's just say you had a situation and you look back on that and you're like, I'm not happy with how I acted, to whatever degree. and then when you were in a similar situation, you made a conscious decision, or maybe looking back, you realize, hey, I made a better decision. I acted better this time. Keep that in mind. So now, question, why do we tell kids Mordechai didn't bow down to Haman? Why do we tell children Mordechai didn't bow to Haman?
Because you don't bow to anybody.
But, right, you guys, Jews don't bow down to people or idols. We only bow down to God. Let me tell you, that is not why Mordechai didn't bow down to Haman. This bowing, as I said, we talked, I think last week, we talked about how this wasn't bowing as in like worshiping, but this was a salutation of honor. Just like, if you're in the presence of the president, what do? The president walks into the room, you stand up. It's common in some communities when a rabbi walks into a room, you stand up. In Persia, when a man of great honor walked by, you bowed. That's simply what you do. Mordechai is not giving Haman this honor. If you know the answer, don't say it. Why doesn't he give him honor? You could say, well, he wanted to kill the Jews. Well, not yet. Not until Mordechai didn't bow down to him. So let's find out why Mordechai really didn't bow down to Haman. And it doesn't, by the way, it doesn't say in the Megillah, but it gives us hints. So we are introduced to Mordechai as Ish Yehudi, a man of Judah, a Jewish man. Hayab Shushan Rabira. In the fortress of Shushan lived a Jew by the name of Mordechai, son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjaminite. So what purpose does this serve? Two things. One is in the Bible, when you tell somebody's lineage, that tells you that they have yiches. That was the Persian word I was looking for. No, that was yiches. They have yiches. What would be an English word for yiches? They have what's the word? There's a different word. Begins with a P, I think.
Nobility?
No, that's not the word. What?
Prominence?
There's a word, but there's some word when you have, I can try. I'm a Kennedy. Oh, you have, prestige. There's a different word. You're all correct, but there's a different word. Anyway.
Like with from art, Providence.
Providence?
I'm talking about when you know where something came from.
Providence.
There's a different word, not so important. Anyway, it's telling us that he has yiches. He has roots. But it's also telling us some specific. So who is Kish and a Benjaminite? Okay, well, let's see. Let's turn back to the clock to Samuel, the book of Samuel. There was a man of Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, whose name was Kish, son of Aviel, son of Zeror, son of Bechorath, son of Phiach, a Benjaminite, a man of substance. He had a son whose name was Saul. So, who, if you build the family tree back, who is Mordechai related to? King Saul. He is related to King Saul. Okay. So not only does he have yichis, we know because we know of he's got this line, but specifically, he is in the same tree as King Saul. So let's keep going. Sometime afterward, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, son of Hamdata, the Agagite. Who was the Agagite?
He was the king who...
Agag is the king that Saul is supposed to kill. So Mordechai is a descendant of King Saul. Haman is a descendant of Agag. So Saul was supposed to do what to Agag? He was supposed to, God commanded him, kill Agag, kill everybody, all the animals, kill them all, but he spares Agag, and it takes Samuel kills Agag. And because of this, what is Saul's punishment? He loses the kingship.
Thank God we had the Haftorah yesterday.
Right. By the way, coincidence? I think not. Absolutely not.
It was yesterday's Haftorah.
In yesterday's Haftarah that we read about that, not coincidence. So, Saul has unfinished business. Or you could say Mordechai's family has unfinished business. Because Haman, Haman shouldn't exist. Haman exists because of Saul's mercy and disobedience to God. Mordechai isn't going to take it. So this is Mordechai saying, my great whatever grandfather didn't finish the job. But this is like a, if you can imagine, in Romeo and Juliet, the two families, we don't know why they're warring, but we do know that there's this generational family battle. Here we have the origin story, but similarly we have this generational battle that's playing itself out in the heart of Persia. What did I say about when the Persians were told they could murder the Jews and also plunder? When that's reversed and the Jews are allowed to defend themselves, they're also allowed to? Okay, so the Jews killed the 10 sons of Haman, of Haman, son of Hamdata, the foe of the Jews, but they didn't lay hands on the spoil. Okay, so were they allowed to, according to the Megillah? Yes, or at least according to Achashverosh? Yes, but they did not. 5 verses later, and the Jews in Shushan mustered again on the 14th day of Adar and slew 300 men in Shushan. Again, 300 men. This is just humor, ridiculousness. But they did not lay hands on the spoil. Next verse. The rest of the Jews, those in the king's provinces, likewise mustered and fought for their lives. They deposed of their enemies, killing 75,000 of their foes, but they did not lay hands on the spoil. What is the Megillah's obsession with not just the spoils, but with not 3 times in the span of 7 verses, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 3 times in the span of 7 verses, the Tanakh is known for its conciseness. It doesn't repeat words unless there's a real purpose, unless there's a real purpose. 3 times in 7 verses it says, it could have just said the last time, and in all of this, they never laid hands on the spoil. So what's going on here?
That's what happened with Saul.
What happened with Saul?
He kept the sheep and other things that he was supposed to kill everything, and he didn't.
Samuel said to Saul, "Thus said the Lord of hosts, now go attack Amalek and prescribe all that belongs to him, spare no one." So, in other words, kill it all. Don't even, But Saul and his troops spared Agag and the best of the sheep, oxen, and his second-born, the lambs, and all else that was of value. So did Saul...
Wouldn't Mordecai have to, kill those animals to make the right, because God wanted some?
Let's read on. Let's read on. I think so then Samuel said to Saul, why did you disobey the Lord and swoop down on the spoil in defiance of the Lord's will? So, yes, you could argue a more literal parallel would be if they killed all the animals. But I think what major point is going on here? So Mordechai has unfinished business with with Agag, has unfinished business with the descendants of Agag. They kill all of the Agagites, Haman and all of his men, and even though they are told, you're allowed, or at least the king says, you are allowed to take the spoils, you are allowed to plunder, you are allowed to take the spoils. What do the Jews do? They don't. They answer to a higher power. They make up for their ancestors' indiscretion against God's commandment, and they defend themselves, but they don't take the spoils. Dr. Sherry?
Yeah, it's just like, it's almost, it's not a war, it's just getting even. It's not carrying it beyond. Does that make any sense? I've never heard this. I'm really excited about
Yeah. I see what you're. What did you say yet?
It's not for personal enrichment. They carry out
Right.
the act, but it's not for their personal.
Right. It's not for right.
It's just that it's what they were allowed to do to defend themselves.
Right.
But not to make it a war, not to make it. God didn't
Right.
command a war.
Right. I think you're right, and I think you're absolutely right. And and we can read, I think, this very purposeful parallel. It's not just that they were so righteous that we're not going to take we're just defending ourselves. This isn't about enriching ourselves, but it's also about making up for their ancestors' indiscretion. Gail, I saw a few hands.
I was just going to, kind of just building on all of that, I was going to say that in the first case
Yeah.
of Saul, God commanded
Mm-hmm.
that they do
Yep.
this. In this case, it was just the king
Correct.
giving the command. It wasn't God
Correct.
commanding them. And so they were fighting to save their lives, which allowed them to do the fighting, but it wasn't God that told them to take the plunder.
You're correct. And I'm saying even more so were they making up for it because they had permission. They had at least legal permission to plunder, but they're saying, no, we are going to do better. We are going to either, as on the sort of plain level as Dr. Sherry suggested, we're not going to make this about enriching ourselves. This is just about survival. But it's also making up for their ancestors. It's like saying, God, we're finishing the job that we were supposed to do generations ago, and we are going to make up for the indiscretion of taking the spoils by not taking it this time. Debbie?
And yet, at the end of the story, Mordecai inherits everything that had belonged to Haman, right? He gets his lands and his
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But he doesn't take it in a aggressive way.
Yeah.
He gets it.
Yeah, he gets it. And either we could look at why that makes sense, or we could say, okay. Lots of hands. This is great. Yeah. And then Marshall.
A few years ago, I read an interesting article with on Purim where the author said, if you really look at the story, not the fun part, but that we're talking about, Ahasuerus was looking for a new women, right, to
Mhm.
please him, and these are actually subordinated peoples of his land, and
Mhm.
he can just at will
Mm-hmm.
draw these women, and Esther was one of them. And the story tries to give strength that Mordecai sort of sets her up, but he really has no control. She's being taken for this
Mhm.
judgment, and essentially to be a sex slave
Mm-hmm.
is happening now. And when I read with that in mind, so he was saying that this is actually like a lot of tragedy in the story that's presented as funny. So when I read also, they left the spoils alone, I think part of the spoils are human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and they free them, and it's like a freedom.
Okay.
You see the reversal,
Yeah.
like you were talking about before. It's like
Interesting. I never thought of that. Thank you. Yeah, the Megillah certainly doesn't say that, but you can certainly, have that sort of, add that to your understanding.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Marshall.
There's a key
and then I want to
difference
move
here.
on. Yeah.
Because the king isn't saying he's going to save the Jews.
Correct.
He's giving the Jews permission
Correct.
to defend themselves.
Correct.
So they're not truly being saved at all.
Correct.
They're just giving permission
Yes.
to get even.
Yes.
Which is significant.
Of course it is.
And then we talk about Agag, but we're also talking about Amalekites.
Yes.
And why God had given Jews definitive permission, or more than that, to take care of all of the Amalekites and all of their possessions, which they did not complete to the satisfaction. And so we have these stories that go forward.
And
there is
yeah.
a significant difference
Absolutely.
between saving people and giving them permission to save themselves.
And we've mentioned that.
Yes.
But this is where I get into this idea, and then we're gonna look at one more thing. Actually, so let's keep going. So that's when the king chooses Esther. Vayahav hamelech et Esther mikol hanashim. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, so he set a royal diadem on her head and made her queen instead or in place of Vashti. So we have Esther becomes the queen in place of Vashti. Now, what does this have to do with Samuel? So David comes back from war triumphant, and he does he dances. And there's different interpretations about the nature of this dance, but he's certainly dancing out of joy. And his wife, his queen Michal, who happens to be whose daughter? Saul's daughter. That's important. Michal, daughter of Saul, looked out the window and saw King David leaping and whirling before the Lord, and she despised him for it. Another course we could have is, another class we could talk about why she despises, why she's so upset. Let's set that aside. But she's upset looking at this, and she's not quiet about it. She tells him off. You're not supposed to act this way. This is beneath you. You're the king. Act with some dignity. David answered Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me instead of your father and all his family and appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel." So to her dying day, Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children. So Michal, she's not killed. She's not but she is set aside. And who in the Megillah is queen? In the Megillah. Fair. In the book of, I don't want to say it, in the Megillah, who is crowned queen? Esther. So a new queen is sort of crowned in place of, Michal is set aside. Here, Vashti is set aside, and Esther is queen. So
is Esther a Benjaminite also?
Yes, because she's a relative of Mordechai. So Michal was her queenship was sort of her. So what did we say? So to her died Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children. So what happens to the scion of Saul? The royalty at least is gone. But through a different branch, we have Esther, who is from the same stock as Saul, is not queen of Israel, but she is crowned queen. So with Mordechai standing up to Haman, he makes up for Saul's not killing Agag, and the Jews not plundering the Persians make up for their ancestors' plundering, taking the spoils, and Michal, having been, is deposed the right word? I don't know if that's really the right word, but Michal's line being cut off gets recrowned queen through Esther, and the line of Saul is returned to its rightful place. If you're of the family of Saul, is returned to the rightful place as royalty. So this is a diaspora story, but it's also a story of the descendants of Saul and how they were people. There are scholars who defend Saul as having gotten a raw deal. Again, a course for another time, that he was punished too severely. But what is Samuel about? The book of Samuel isn't about fairness. It's about King David. It's about King David and how he is God's chosen one to be king. Fairness my tuchus. This is about King David. This is about restoring fairness to, a perceived fairness to a perceived slight against Saul by restoring Saul's kingship via Esther for having corrected the errors of the previous generations. And that's where I come back to that question I asked in the middle of thinking about a time when we were able to at least try to make up for previous bad choices by making proper choices when we encountered similar situations, and metaphorically restoring ourselves, even if we can't restore ourselves to the kingship of Israel, but symbolically restore our honor, restore our dignity, restore our pride, restore our fill in the blank through those corrected choices. So this is, the book of Esther is full of reversals within, but it also has this fascinating reversal of another biblical narrative, and so too do we have the opportunity to make up for. You could either say things in our own lives or maybe even past generations. So that is the three-session course on the book of Esther. I hope you've enjoyed. Debbie, what was your question?
In retrospect, we can see all of these connections.
Yes.
Do you think Mordecai had any of this in mind when he decided not to?
I think that that is how we're to understand this. I think that is the message. I think that is the book of Esther is all about, in addition to reversals, about hidden and revealed. Esther is hidden. Her name is Hadassah. But she has the Persian name Esther. Her Jewishness is hidden to the king, but then revealed. God is hidden, but there are certain hints that maybe God is there. The book of, and then we have Mordecai. They don't say, "I'm not bowing down to you because of our family line," but if we look closely enough, it's there. So I think this is absolutely part of the narrative that's to be found if we uncover what's there in plain sight.
And who wrote the book of Esther?
We don't know for sure, but as I said,
Speculation.
I thought you said it was Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks might as well have been. There are hints that it was written in the 2nd to 4th century before the Common Era, but we don't know by whom or.
Do they think it was written in Persia or?
Probably not. I think it's with an eye towards an outsider's understanding of sort of a satirical look at, or farcical, I think satire is not the right word, but farcical look at Persian life from the outside looking in.
Hassan, when you were in school,
Yeah.
is this the way they taught?
In cantorial school, you mean?
Yeah. Because I am absolutely floored. I'm in my 70s, and I've never heard any of this before. And I was just wondering whether or not, if I was a student of the book of Esther, that this would be the way that it was.
Yeah. I have a two-part answer. So the simple answer is yes. 1 year in cantorial school, I took a book on the 5 Megillot, and so this Lamentations and Ecclesiastes, Ruth, Song of Songs. I don't remember his name. I may have the syllabus still, but I don't remember his name. I could find it out easily enough, and I wouldn't say that this was the only thing we learned, but in him we did learn about Esther, viewing it as a comedy, and we did learn about almost all of these reversals. The one about Esther and Michal I actually learned in a different class at the conservative yeshiva in Israel. But yes, that was, we did learn this. I would say that was one of several ways that we looked at the book of Esther. And to your point of, I'm 70 and I'm floored by this, I never knew this. The good part is, I'm so glad that even at 70, you're learning, you're learning new things, and I think that is one of the, if I'm going to be kind, I'll say shortcomings. If I'm going to be harsh, I'm going to say failings of Jewish education across the board about where it ends. That, what? Failings. Okay, I can say failings. That we often, our Judaism remains, we learn things as a child at a child's level, and we stay there. And the harsh word for this is pediatric Judaism. It's pediatric Judaism, and I say that acknowledging that it's a harsh word, but that we don't learn. Many people, I don't say we, but many people don't learn on a more full and deep level. And on the one hand, you can't learn everything about everything. It's a rare person who can and does. But this is why we have this class, so that people of older than children can continue to learn and look at at something like the book of Esther that is so, on one level, so accessible to children. As I said, I was just up with the kids in the shul school, and they were having a ball, just booing at Haman. They get silly, but we can look at it at a much deeper, higher level, and we have that opportunity in many different ways. So, Patrick, and then George.
One thing that I learned from this course is that when I think of writers and authors and fiction and nonfiction and comedy and satire, I always think of it as a modern thing. And here, 200 to 400 years before the Common Era, here's a guy who wants to express, who wants to say something about history.
Yeah.
He knows it so far, and he puts it in the way of comedy.
Yep.
Well, that's pretty much.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. I mean, the Greeks had comedy.
Yes.
The Greeks had comedy, and some, if we looked at this from another angle, we would see how the Book of Esther mirrors aspects of Greek comedy and how Greeks saw the Empire of Persia. So, some things that we think of as being very modern have ancient roots. George.
When I was teaching this to teenagers,
Yeah.
I also put it into historical context.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on in the Jewish world there was no kingdom of Israel at that time.
Okay.
Was sort of, it was Hellenization.
Mm-hmm.
in the 2nd to the 4th century BCE. We're dealing with Alexander, and we're dealing with the rise of the Greeks and the assimilation of Jews who were refusing to be who were reversing circumcision. And again, one of the lessons I was teaching was we have to not be assimilated. And I was teaching that from the context of the American Jewish community.
Yep, sure. Yeah.
Just to add to both of your comments, I think about the cryptic nature of maybe like Jewish literature as far back as, you know, biblical things, and to get a point across. It seems like there's a lot of hidden messages, and that they were living in an environment where they couldn't freely speak. I find it so interesting. I mean, we're so fortunate, hopefully it continues, that we live in the United States where we have this kind of freedom, so we're not even used to, like, we wouldn't even recognize the cryptic nature, you know, without your help. But some people, like if you talk to people from the Soviet Union, like that's the only, like Shostakovich, to all his symphonies, there's like hidden messages in there, and we don't think about what it feels like to not. That's not a humor we have to rely on to get our messages across. You know, it's a difference of cultural experience, but their experiences must have been so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say yes, and even in the fortunate times that we live in, time and place that we live in, we all, I shouldn't say we all because I don't know everybody, but many people do experience that balance, at least the balance of how Jewish am I versus how American am I, how Jewish am I, how secular am I, how, what choices do I make, what compromises do I make, and those are choices that we all have to make. So in one sense, it's not something that we can relate to, maybe to that degree, but I think sometimes those extreme cases help shine a light on what we still do encounter today. Yeah, Marshall.
There's a couple of points that disturb the normal joy of this holiday.
Yeah.
Which you refer to as pediatric Judaism. For the first part, when we began this conversation today, there were language that was very much a blueprint for how the Nazis prepared and treated the Jews. It's almost like a blueprint of people being and you can take their goods. And, make them, it's a blueprint. That's the first disturbing part if you want to dig into that. But as part of a Havurah that existed here for 35 years that I was a part of, we took this from a woman's point of view. And how horrible this whole treatment of women is presented in this storyline. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this that are pretty serious. And I think it was the last session, with regards to hanging from a tree that is part of the African American month.
Yeah.
It runs so true with Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit. So there's some really powerful analogies you can make from this storyline that was written so long ago.
Yes.
So, hey, we've been there before. This is how people treat each other.
Yeah.
And it was recognized and it was approved of to a certain degree. And it's very hard to take.
Yeah. And I say, to everything you said, I say yes. And if you remember from the first session for those who weren't there was comedy in the Book of Esther, or the Book of Esther as comedy. And we can look at all of these very serious aspects. And we can also, that to a certain extent reinforces the comic, not only the comic nature, but the comic necessity of the book of Esther. Again, framing this as, you could say, I don't find this funny, and that's your right. Nobody has to find the Three Stooges funny. You don't have to like it, but one of the purposes of the book of Esther is to take everything that you're saying and put it in this crazy, topsy-turvy, upside-down, distorted world where we can look at these terrible things and laugh.
Well, we have a habit of doing that.
Right.
Jews in
And we can look at this
particular,
and we
in
can
the
use
business.
laughter not only as medicine but also as a weapon. When we're powerless, we can use this and we can laugh about it as medicine, but also as a weapon. We can't actually speak, when we can't actually speak words of truth or take up arms against a dictator, we can use humor as the weapon and also the medicine. Yeah, Judy.
I've heard, and I understand fully, that when you talk to established comedians,
Mm-hmm.
they will tell you honestly that my comedy comes from pain, from
Yep.
internal pain.
Yep.
That is how you reach comedy, and that is through pain experience.
Yeah, and they are, but they, and they're taking the hafuch, this reversal nature of Purim, and they are either as a means of survival for themselves, or as a means of, making a living, using that pain, or making joy from that pain. So, absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much. I really hope thank you. I hope that you'll join us tomorrow night for Purim. People sometimes say, well, I don't have any kids anymore. This is not a kid's holiday, or it's not strictly a kid's holiday. This is fun for everyone. Please join us Monday for the Megillah reading, Tuesday for the Suda. If you are here Monday, please bring some contributions for the food pantry. Non-perishable food items or new or gently used clothes, or apparently red Sendix bags. If you have those around, they can use those too. Thanks, everyone.
Food pantry can use the red Sendix bags, but the mats that they are
Correct.
cannot use.
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
cannot use, yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone.